just, I guess, go with a raise of hands of people that want to ask questions. Yes, sir?
I'd like to ask questions to all three of the panelists. When my health suffers a huge information security breach, why won't the government fall?
Do you want to go first? Or? Because voters don't understand, because most people don't know what my health is, they don't understand the implications, and these sorts of issues of privacy and digital security are not high on most voters' priority list. It's kind of my instinctive answer, but there's probably a lot more to it than that.
I just want to be a bit provocative. We talk about the government owning this data or centralising our data, but they probably have better cybersecurity limits, things, different processes in place to ensure that the data is secure. I mean, they're not stupid, but we so willingly load everything up on Facebook and on your social channels without any concern. Yet when it comes to this application of government who are trying to understand the problem of health data, because it is a massive problem, yes, it may not be the best way of doing it, but at least we're finally having a conversation in our community about what is health data and what it means to me. But I think also it's about taking that responsibility too. You are posting so much personal information online. Where is this thing called privacy? Does it still exist? And when are you going to take responsibility for your own privacy and your own data rather than actually pushing on to responsibility for government to protect? I think it's a two-way street. I'm being provocative here. I just want have a bit of a thought process here, because the technology is not going to solve the problem. It's about the governance and how we look at the data and things like that. But that was my sort of take, about there is no such thing as privacy.
I think if there's a breach in that centralised My Health record, we expect that, and so we are not disappointed. The problem with so much of Australia's lack of anger is that we already know that politicians are corrupt. We already know that developers are corrupt. We already know that we have concentration camps in order. We already know that we're not doing anything substantive around climate change. But boy, are we upset about the cricketers tampering with the ball, because we did not expect that. And so the reason why all this kind of shit is being not an issue for us is because we already know a whole bunch of these kinds of things, and it doesn't seem to really faze us that much, because humans kind of get used to these kinds of things, whereas it really hit us hard when even the people that we held in high esteem, that they were also doing something malicious. And I think that's why, the health record has some sort of hacker attack. Well, we're only discussing it right now, so if it does actually happen, it's like, well, there you go.
Any other questions?
No, I was going to say, it's really interesting around the whole health data, because I know if I go to my doctor, he or she will fax my need for a request for an appointment, or fax it. And I have asked that question, why are you faxing? Why aren't you using a digital format? Yeah, no, it's like, they actually still fax. And the reason why is that that's just the one thing that they do. So how do we trust those systems that are already in place before even the data is aggregated and put into the systems like My Health record? So if we're going to build new hospitals in the future, just remove fax machines. And then we might start seeing a bit different in cultural shift.
Questions? Yep.
What are some practical solutions to solve the last mile problem that are happening right now?
Can you repeat the question in the microphone?
What are some practical solutions to solve the last mile problem with implementing blockchain technology, and which ones are realistically able to be executed now?
What it means by last mile is the disconnect between, I guess, our different technology capacities or capabilities within different countries, or locations. So last mile is like that distance between actually delivering the solution. So it is a common question, and when I was in Bangkok with the USA Bank, that was often asked around, the whole thing was about, what about the last mile, what about the last mile? And it comes down to, again, the design of who you're designing for, which comes down to human-centered design. If you're trying to solve a problem in a community that has no electricity, has no internet connectivity, that requires some form of technology solution, we cannot be arrogant and ridiculous to think that let's go design that from a 4G perspective. It has to be contextual and what the problem is you're solving. But it's definitely, it comes down to the design before you actually start doing the build. One of the things I do know, I was talking before, Dr. Jane Thomas has been working in PNG, and how they solve the problem around identity in villages around the last mile problem is actually having elders, women elders in the community that will identify the community, and that is taken as truth. And once that truth has been established of who is who, then the design can actually assist in solving the problem around it, or getting services because the identity is being solved through a different way.
I might just add that I also believe that there is a systemic problem in the design community itself. I've written one of the first blockchain papers for design audience, and I'm using blockchain as a case, and it could be also artificial intelligence or machine learning or any other piece of technology innovation that is still very early in its stage. I think a lot of the way that I see technology being introduced into the design community is at a later stage, and partly it's due to this disconnect between the engineers and the people at the more pointy end of the spectrum, if you like, that are much more versed around the computer science of things, around the algorithms, the actual programming side, etc. And then you have design communities and design conferences and design processes and methodologies, and they are then doing their work around incremental improvements of usability, human factors, the user experience, etc., etc. So what we currently kind of refer to as the last mile. In that paper, I actually argue that we need to start that work much earlier, and also trying to have the confidence of using some of the design methodologies with regards to design fiction and speculative design and critical design and the kinds of more anticipatory frameworks in order to temper with the way that it takes shape and it takes a certain direction. And I think sometimes it feels as if it's already too late. We're just kind of packaging up shit rather than having a good level of agency at the point of creation, at the point of genesis. This may happen now differently with regards to startups being really keen on design processes, but then you run into the other problem, which is that there's this really nice blog article that Mike Montero wrote a while ago on a Medium blogging site called Dear Design Students, and a lot of our design graduates and our design students at QUT picked that up and are actually actively trying to consider it. The article is called Ethics Can't Be a Side Hustle, and it's really about the experience of a whole bunch of people with technical skills and design skills becoming part of larger corporations or larger platforms, larger systems. They're not stupid, they actually know what they are doing, they also know what their employer, what their corporation is doing, and they start to realize actually it's not all good, is the rose-colored glasses are coming off. And so what some of the Silicon Valley companies have introduced is this: you got Friday off, you can do something good on Fridays. So, wreck the planet from Monday to Thursday, but on Friday you can volunteer your time to do something good. So you get ethics offsets, the way that people have introduced carbon offsets. And so this Dear Design Students blog entry is saying you can't have ethics offsets. You can't just have this appreciation of contributing to a neoliberal corporation that is exploiting workers during the day, and then after hours on Fridays or here on the weekends you volunteer to do something good. And so the problem that on the one hand we are calling for designers to be part of these different genesis moments earlier, I think it's a good thought, but at the same time we also don't really give them the level of empowerment to have a say. So what happened in old days is there were unions for those kinds of workers to actually discuss the implications of their work. If you now have someone that is part of the gig economy or part of a startup or part of a design company, they're not joining a union, they may not even think there is any union out there. So there is actually a whole bunch of research around the fact that unions in the country are not quickly enough catching up to the need of changing their ways of membership and recruitment in order to be available for designers. But also there isn't really the way of thinking of unions as the reason of why they would sign up for membership. It may not be in order to push through higher pay, it might actually be because they're concerned about the shit that the management is up to.
No, I couldn't add to that, but good point. I'll share it around. We shouldn't be talking too much.
Yeah, any questions?
What was that?
There seems to be a pretty big divide in the blockchain community between crypto traders and then also blockchain for social impact of government people. What do you think is the number one thing the social impact people could learn from the ICO people, and what do you think the ICO people could learn from the government people?
I think I think the dichotomy might actually be a false one, because this I mean, blockchain is fundamentally about saying, okay, we can't trust each other, let's have a system that we can trust, and that will act as the mediator. But why can't we trust each other? It's fundamentally often because people have a financial interest in behaving dishonestly. And so rather than saying, okay, we just can't trust people, let's just give up on that. People are going to act in their own self-interest and there's nothing we can do about it. Maybe we should be saying, okay, well, what is it about our current social organisations, what is it about our current society that creates this lack of trust, and get it at that fundamental level. So I would challenge whether there is a clear dichotomy there. Maybe we should be saying, okay, big corporations have a need. Like, I thought the supply chain discussion was really interesting. It's like, okay, we want to make sure that somewhere along the line someone's not fiddling with the product or diluting it or misleading us about what's in that end product. It's like, the reason we can't trust those people is because they have a financial interest to screw us over. And if we can find ways to work around that, then we don't need to set up these parallel systems of proving and establishing trust. And then we can instead just get to building new relationships between people that aren't mediated through capitalism, but are mediated through our shared responsibility as humans. Sorry, that's a bit of a side answer to your question.
So, Brooke, are you asking the question about the relationship between the initial coin offering community, the crypto community, as well as the role of government in terms of where they're all sitting together in the relationship? Do different things.
Yeah, but then they're approaching the problem in different ways as well. So what do they learn?
Okay, well, if I were to talk about the ICOs, is there a familiarity in the room what an ICO is, an initial coin offering? Yes? Okay, well, basically, for those, I'll be very quick, it's like doing an IPO, initial public offering, except that there's no equity. So when you do an IPO, you become a shareholder in that company, have voting rights and stuff like that. And you can only list on the exchange within the origin of your country, i.e. Australia. But with ICOs, it's an initial coin offering where through Ether, which is largely the crypto of choice, you're able to take buy tokens in that company. You don't have equity, but you have an interest in basically that company realising their roadmap. And we've seen some companies raise a ridiculous amount of money, like EOS raised $4 billion, I think it was. Yet they really haven't delivered much yet. So that's a concern to government around the world. So they are taking a great concern. So obviously China made ICOs illegal, so does South Korea. But I don't know if this conversation gets out there about why these governments make these things like cryptocurrency exchanges illegal and stuff like that. And it's probably going to piss this one, probably Jonathan off about what I'm just about to say. But the reason why South Korea actually made them illegal is because they could see their population investing in something that they were very concerned about. They were diluting their superannuation funds to actually invest in crypto and ICOs, which are largely scams. So about 95% of them actually are scams. If you are going to invest in an ICO, you look for those ones that are building out infrastructure, the ones that are really building really interesting infrastructure to solve the scalability of this technology, not applications. Any applications think that they can build out global applications really is not correct. But what this has done is it started a global conversation. So the G20 had a meeting just around, I think, around May this year, whereby they actually had the countries vote on whether they thought that ICOs should be illegal, whether cryptocurrency should be illegal, all that sort of stuff, or things like that. Now, this is phenomenal because only on the 31st of October 2008 did the white paper come out, so this technology is not even 10 years old. Yet we have this global conversation around what does this technology mean, should we be regulating it? From a G20 perspective, there's a strong interest in the technology, but not to over-regulate it where they lose the ability to innovate. So I think the world is trying to come to some sort of agreement about this technology. We're also seeing a movement away from ICOs and towards security token offerings, whereby you do actually get an equity position, not a vote, but you get a derivative or a dividend from your interest in the company, which is starting to change the way that the regulators are talking to the blockchain community. But we also do a lot of self-regulation. In Australia, we have ASIC, the ACCC, we also have the APRA, Austrade. We have a very strong conversation around this whole process here in Australia. But I think what has happened is the ICO, the blockchain, the crypto community have forged ahead. Governments are now picking this up and having a global conversation around the regulatory environment for the good, I think, from a good perspective.
If I add two scenarios to the discussion on ICOs, I think what people on that ICO spectrum could learn is, I suppose, that there is other reasons why you would consider or attempt an initial coin offering. So in the case of Beef Ledger, and we won't go into too much detail, which I'm I suppose not allowed to, but there's a whole bunch of information you can also find on the Beef Ledger website, which is just beefledger.io. That talks about the ICO. And yes, it is with regards to funding this project in the first place. And that is important because